Miss Rabbit is the most beloved characters in the Peppa Pig universe, and her many jobs are the funniest running joke in the series. But is there a dark and sinister reason behind all that? We think so, and we can prove it. There are a bunch of strange things about rabbits, and the final reason will surprise you. Have you ever noticed that rabbits don't live in the same neighborhoods as the other animals? Remember that episode where Rebecca has to go home, but Peppa doesn't want her to? Just for fun, she ends up getting invited to check out the rabbit family's place, and we find out they live in burrows in the hills, unlike other animals that stay in houses on top of them. A lot of people might say that's just how rabbits are, but I think they kind of isolate themselves from the other animals. It's like mixing business with pleasure. You know, when I was sharing this theory with the team for the channel, someone asked if it's just because they're hares and the others are mammals that this happens. Separation might be the pretty reason. They give for doing it right, but I think there's a deeper, more strategic reason behind their split, and I'll prove it by the end of this video. So put on your tinfoil hats, because today's Peppa Pig theory is going to blow your mind. Are you ready? Remember that episode where it rains so much that it floods the whole world? Grandpa Pig comes to the rescue in his boat, and along with Peppa, he goes from house to house asking what everyone wants to eat because they're heading to the store to make sure no one goes without during the natural disaster. The weirdest part is that nobody treats it like a disaster. It's just like someone left the tap on and the pool overflowed. Anyway, they get to the store to buy everyone's orders. Mrs. Coelho is working, while everyone else seems totally chill about this tragedy. And during the conversation, we see that they don't even bother to ask her if she's okay. They really don't care at all. But remember, rabbits live in burrows in the hills, right? The other animals only feel safe because their homes are on top of them, and nobody asks her about what happened to the rabbits who had their tunnels destroyed, because no one cares that there's such a huge disconnect. With a tragedy this big, there's gotta be a reason behind it, right? And what's even more surprising is that even with all the tunnels flooded, Mrs. Coelho still goes to work to help others. Or did she do that to cover up something because maybe she doesn't need to worry since everything's fine with the rabbits? In some mysterious way, I'm telling you, this theory has legs. So drop on this rabbits in the comments if you're curious to know more. Have you ever stopped to think about it? Because she has so many jobs, some might say it's just a silly joke that cartoonists keep bringing up. But if you think about it logically, you do things based on how much they'll benefit you or the people you care about, right? She's a pilot, a helicopter pilot, a firefighter, a salesperson, an aquarium cleaner, a taxi driver, an elevator operator, among a ton of other things I can't even remember right now. What benefit could someone possibly get from that? It's such a drag to work like this. The first thing that comes to mind is money, cash, dough. Just like rabbits, it seems to multiply, and she probably has a whole family to take care of. Or does she, after that flood? Now she wants to get back at the rest of the world that ignored her while her whole family drowned and she was the only one who got away. But what could someone in her situation, juggling so many jobs, possibly want to do for revenge against an entire society? The answer is simple. Control. Just think about it. All the mentioned have some usefulness that everyone will need at some point. They provide rescue, transportation, food, and medicine basics for daily life. She's the one in charge of it all, which is brilliant because when the day of her rebellion finally comes and she, along with the new era of the bunnies, pulls the plug on society, it shatters all the layers of coexistence since she was the only service provider around. But there's still a specific point that I talked about how little importance they gave to Mrs. Rabbit's day off. It's the episode that really shows her crazy control plan because it proves two things. If you remember that episode, she suffers from burnout and can't work anymore because she's so worn out and a bunch of tasks get left hanging while clients are waiting for help. The parents come together to try to help out just so it doesn't look bad on their end, but they still can't stop calling. Mrs. Coelho needs help with her work, and that's the first challenge. No one would know how to manage without her, since nobody can do it as well as she does. And if you remember, there's another important thing happening in this episode. The kids stay at her place to take care of her because she wasn't doing well. Burnout is a real issue, and people need rest and support. The best way to relax is definitely not having a bunch of kids running around you, talking in your ear, making you do things because they're in their little play world, like Susie pretending to be a nurse when she actually needed a real one. The second thing this proves is that no one cares about her, and those are all the signs she needed. Unless that was wasn't the real Mrs. Rabbit. If that makes you question things, then now's the time to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications on new videos. We've talked before about how rabbits, they reproduce really fast, right? And we've already established that the inhabitants of this world don't care much about the rabbits. Every time they need something done, they just call this Mrs. Rabbit and always refer to her that way. They treat her like she's the same person every time, but what if she's not? What if every service is done by a different Mrs. Rabbit? It kind of makes sense since each animal species is like their last name. So calling them all Mrs. Rabbit isn't wrong, but it doesn't mean they're all the same person, does it? It would be like saying that every Japanese person is the same, or that every Asian is Korean, which is really disrespectful. But instead of getting offended, the rabbits started using it to their advantage because their goal is long term. That just makes me believe even more that this all leads to the main reason they're excluded, and it fuels their desire for revenge against society in the form of control. The rabbits are all part of a cult, a secret society aimed at taking control, the world behind the scenes through the economy, trade, and media. So in the end, only the rabbits are left. If you really think about it, the rabbits are the majority since there are so many of them and only one family of each other animal. The whole structure of the cult revolves around a single person, a matriarch who acts as a mother to all the lady rabbits that came after the only one who survived the flood, the one that's the only one called Mama Rabbit. Why is it that all the other bunnies are called Mr. Rabbit or Miss Rabbit, but only Rebecca's mom, one of Peppa's best friends, is called Mummy Rabbit? I mean, obviously it's because she's related to Rebecca, but bunnies reproduce like crazy. Who's to say Mummy Rabbit isn't the mom of a ton of other bunnies, or even all of them? Who knows if this matriarch of the New Age bunny cult isn't the original Mrs. Rabbit? That's why I think this theory makes so much sense, because everything fits together in a way you just can't ignore.